Now let's discuss sources of stress. This is the view of stress as a stimulus, a property of the events or situations we face. Stress is viewed as a response, means a person's response to a threatening event or situation. The environment and crowding. Calhoun found that when the population of rats reached a certain level, fighting increased and social strata emerged. 2 dominant male rats staked out their own private pens and maintained a low population density within them. The rest of the population stayed in 2 pens, but population did not skyrocket because infant mortality increased. Females were less receptive, some male rats became cannibalistic, and some became sexually deviant. Stokes distinguished between population density and crowding. Population density is a physical condition in which large population occupies limited space. Crowding is a psychological condition. It arises from a person's perception. In 1978, Paulus examined mortality rates in a prison psychiatric unit over a 16-year period during times of high and low density living conditions. They found a positive correlation between population and mortality. Inmates who live under dense conditions also have higher blood pressure and stress hormone levels. Additionally, imaging scans of city dwellers or those who grew up in cities show more brain reactivity to stress have been conducted. Germans solved math problems that were expected to be easy, but were hard enough that each got most wrong. While they were in the brain scanner, they heard the researcher criticizing their performance, saying they might not be skilled enough to participate. The initial study with 32 subjects found those from cities of more than 100,000 showed more activation of amygdala than those from towns of more than 10,000, and those in turn showed more activation than those from rural areas. When another group of 37 adults did mental tasks without being criticized for poor performance, they showed no urban-rural differences. Effect comes from criticism. It could be that stress comes from dealing with others. Some examples of pollution as a source of stress are as follows. The fear of accidents may pervade neighborhoods surrounding industries where dangerous chemicals are used or manufactured, providing long-lasting stress. Long-term Los Angeles residents were less sensitive to air pollution than people who had recently moved to LA, both in their perception of it and in their biochemical response to it. It also took less active measures to cope with unpleasant air pollution. Noise is subjective. Think about what your parents say about the music you listen to. In 1993, Navisian and Andresen asked residents living beside a busy street about health, sleep, anxiety level, and attitude toward noise. There was no relation between objective levels of noise and either health or sleep. There was a strong association between residents' subjective view of noise and number of health complaints. Noise effects on children. Research examples. Children who lived in noisier apartments built on bridges that spanned busy expressways, for example, showed greater difficulty with auditory discrimination tasks and in reading than counterparts who lived in quieter apartments. A study of railroad noise found that children taught in classrooms on the side of the school facing the tracks read less well. Children who lived and attended school in an air corridor performed less well on both simple and difficult problem-solving tasks than did children not living or attending school in an air corridor. The former group was more likely to give up on difficult tasks than were children who lived in quieter neighborhoods. What are the reasons for these effects? Adults cope by selective attention, but because they are young, they may not be able to distinguish between speech-relevant and speech-irrelevant sounds as well as adults can. They may have trouble with verbal skills and reading because they tune out verbal elements in their environment. The fact that children exposed to long-term stressors give up on tasks more easily suggests learned helplessness. And they may be more vulnerable to learned helplessness than adults because they already experience lower level of control in their lives. The work by Craig in 1993 refers to the many sources of environmental stressors that affect city living. They tend to be beyond personal control. The fear of crime has become a part of the urban environment. In 1993, Ross surveyed over 2,000 people between the ages of 18 and 90. Those afraid of being assaulted, robbed, or physically injured reported worse health than those who had no such fears. Perhaps a restriction from outdoor activities or exercise explained the above relation. Lack of control is more stressful than the burden of decision-making. Using stress-related illness as criterion, Colligan in 1978 found the following occupations to be the most stressful: construction worker, secretary, laboratory technician, waiter or waitress, machine operator, farm worker, painter, middle-level manager. The demands from two directions. Note, this is an old study that did not take into account individuals' perception of stress, but rather just their stress-related illnesses. Also, high demands plus low control produces job stress and is related to heart disease. Social support is a factor that can increase or decrease this risk. Johnson and Hall in 1988 found individuals with a combination of high demands, low control, and low social support were at double risk for cardiovascular disease compared to those in jobs with low demands, high control, and high social support from coworkers. Coddington and House in 1987 found the combination of a noisy workplace and rotating shift work can produce a higher level of epinephrine excretion. Work overload can also be a factor. This feeling required to work too hard and too long at too many tasks and feel more stressed, practice poorer health habits, and sustain more health risks. However, the total number of hours worked is not a reliable indicator of stress. Women who pursue careers are not at increased risk for coronary heart disease. But women who have employment and childcare obligations experience more stress than women who are not employed. However, they also experience more satisfaction. Women who had young children and a job, but who were not married, had elevated risk for poorer health. Employed women are generally healthier than non-employed women. Note, we don't know the direction of effect. It could be that the healthiest women are the ones that are able to work outside of the home. Women's workplace stress is related more to type of job than to gender. In a 1992 survey of college students, 1/3 of stress events involved relationships. Non-family relationships were a more frequent source of stress than family relationships. This may be an artifact of college life, which tends to create more non-family interactions and stress. Both husbands and wives who spend many hours devoted to jobs and who feel a lack of support from spouses tend to experience stress. Gottman in 1991 found that couples whose interactions provoked the physiological responses associated with stress tended to have marriages that ended in divorce. He is able to predict with incredible accuracy who will stay together and who won't by watching couples discuss a topic that tends to cause conflict. Sleep problems includes insomnia and voluntary sleep deprivation. Sleep problems are a growing problem with all the current technology. Stress and anxiety is both a cause and an effect of sleep problems. The health effects of sleep deprivation include an increased risk of accidents. Sleep deprivation impairs attention, concentration, may produce hallucinations. Changes in immune system function. There is evidence that some immune systems increase while others decrease. There's a link with obesity in children and adults.